it's working. Does my team also have access? I don't see anyone from my team here.
We have someone by the name Garima.
Yeah, hi Vibha.
Garima is here. Garima is also a senior counselor with us.
All right.
Hi Loreen.
Hi Garima.
Hi Garima.
Hi Sohail.
We have a minute to go and 28 participants. I believe we should wait just for a couple of minutes and not begin sharp at 3.
Garima, are you able to turn on your video? Just check. Can someone let Prerna in? Because Prerna, I don't think is in. Prerna, if you're in, can you say something or just?
No, she's not in.
Prerna saying I have joined, but she's not been able to join.
Has she joined the panel link or the participant link?
I'm just saying her to join the panel link.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm fine, right? You can see me and you can hear me.
Yeah. Yes, Vibha.
You could see my slides.
Yeah.
Hey, Sohail.
Hi, Vibha. Give us a couple of minutes. People are logging in, and we.
Garima, in the Q&A, if you feel like jumping in, just jump in. Do jump in whenever you can answer something.
Yeah. Sure.
It's 4 minutes past 3. So, Vibha, I think we can start off. So, Yali Madat to everybody. I hope I'm audible to everyone.
Yes.
Yeah, so let me kick off the proceedings and thank you everyone for joining us today, giving us your valuable time on a lazy Saturday afternoon. One of the questions that as education board, I would say the most frequently asked question that comes to us is, what guidance do we provide as education board for our students who aspire to pursue education abroad? And there are questions related to right from which country to go to, how do I fund my education abroad, how do I shortlist the right universities. So we are privileged today to have Vibha Kagzi with us, who is an extremely well-known name in the industry of helping students, as she says, helping students crack the Ivy League. And just to give you a very brief snippet of her profile, she's been, just give me a minute. I'm sorry, Vibha. I could hand it over to you. I seem to have. I'll hand it over to Vibha. If you could briefly introduce yourself. I seem to be having a network problem. Vibha, over to you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you to Sohail, Lareen, everyone from the Aga Khan team, Shazia for reaching out. Me and my team are really excited to be part of this event. And it's going to be our honest endeavor to be able to share as much knowledge as we can with you. And hopefully the next 60 minutes will help you figure out your career and study abroad aspirations. I also have with me on call Garima, who is our senior counselor, who studied at Oxford, and I, as you know, have studied in the US. So between Garima and me, we'll be able to field any questions you might have at the end. So we'll save about maybe 20, 25 minutes for questions, because we were requested to make this an interactive session. And honestly, given the virtual setup these days, we love whatever interaction we can get. So I'm going to save a generous 20, 25 minutes for questions and quickly kickstart the presentation. I also have Varsha here from our head office, who will be able to help and might also be answering some of the questions in the chat. Feel free to put questions in the chat as we're going along. I probably won't disrupt the flow as I'm talking, but I'll make sure I review the entire chat at the end and take any questions you might have punched in. So if everyone from the Aga Khan team is fine, if I can kickstart, and I'll just share my screen, please.
Sure, Vibha, over to you.
Okay.
Apologies for the slight glitch at our end. Please go ahead.
I'll go through my intro and my slides, no problem at all. Okay, can you guys see my screen?
Yes, Vibha, we can. We can see you.
You're able to see my screen? All right. Guys, so hi, I'm very much.
Your voice is breaking. We can't hear you clearly.
Undergraduate at Carnegie Mellon University in States and the Indian students. Are you able to hear me now, Shazia?
Could you just go ahead, because your voice is breaking? You'll have to restart. We couldn't hear what you just said in the beginning.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, it's clear.
Okay, let's try this. Is this better?
Yes.
Okay. I've essentially introduced myself saying I'm from Bombay, did my undergrad at Carnegie Mellon, MBA at Harvard Business School, and along the way visited many other campuses doing short courses from there. Essentially, I would classify myself as a junkie. I love being on different campuses. Nothing energizes me more than a classroom full of intellectual people, and of course, a webinar full of interesting questions. So looking forward to your also a certified leadership coach. Just got certified last year. Also have taken on many leadership roles in my personal capacity. Was the president of the Harvard Club here in Bombay for 4 years. Also was in the Carnegie Mellon Admissions Council. So I used to do interviews for undergraduates applying to Carnegie Mellon. Very active on lots of social media platforms. Quora seems to be one of the ones that students really like us for because they ask questions and I answer them. My responses have had over 2 million views as of now, and very active on Instagram as well. So if anyone would like to connect, it's just Vibha Kagzi. Been awarded a bunch of leadership awards, diversity awards, most prominent being the Women of Excellence plaque at the Women Economic Forum in 2018. I also like having a good time, and I think if you're applying to undergraduate or masters or MBA programs, these fun pursuits or pursuits of happiness, as I call them, become a very critical part of your application. So I put this slide in just to say that this is me pursuing things that make me happy. It's my way of sort of letting my hair down, and also interestingly have tremendously helped me in terms of getting admitted to top tier schools and also sustaining some amazing friendships because of common interests. I sing, I'm a certified yoga teacher, I've been a certified open water diver, I've learned French at the Alliance Française, passion traveling, I've been to 60 countries, seen 5 continents, have one continent to go. Professionally, I'm, as you know, the founder and chief education officer here at reachiv.com. Our focus, as I mentioned, is 2-tier. We do study abroad counseling and career-related counseling, not necessarily for people who might want to go out. Expertise spans undergrad, masters, PhD, MBA, and executive education. We're committed to our students and not colleges, universities, any other organizations. As I introduced Gama earlier on, she studied at Oxford. So my team and I have all studied at students. These successes and counseling is done entirely personalized. Hi guys, did we just lose somebody?
Ma'am, your voice is breaking.
My voice is breaking. Okay, let me just find another location.
Yeah.
Is it better here?
Yeah, now we can use it.
Vibha, maybe Varsha can share the screen and you can talk.
That's also fine. Varsha, can we do that? Please hear me now. I just moved to a different location.
Again,
same. My router. It's still not clear. Varsha, do you want to share the screen and I can just speak? Someone is saying yes. Okay, Varsha says yes, she will share her screen. I will turn my screen share off. Okay, my screen share is now off. Varsha, I'm on slide with the key number, slide number 4 or 5, I believe. Varsha, you're sharing the screen, right? Just unmute yourself and say. Varsha? She's not able to unmute. Someone from the settings team might have to unmute her.
Vibha, she has co-host rights, so she can unmute.
Now she's saying,
Yeah.
even screenshot.
Can you give her screen sharing rights? Can you make Varsha the co-host as well?
had made up.
Okay, as we are waiting for this, if anyone has any questions, pressing questions you want to put in the chat, please feel free to put them in. I'd be more than happy to look through the chat.
Vibha, Varsha has been disconnected till she joins. Oh, no, I can see her. Okay. Varsha started screen sharing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that screen. Okay, terrific. Varsha, just go next slide, huh, please? Perfect. Next one. Next one. Varsha, next one. Yep, next. Okay, thank you, Varsha. All right, guys, continuing. As I mentioned, we are a student-centric organization. We do not take any commissions or referral fees from any education institutions. So we provide 100% unbiased advice. And our services are available globally because we work on a virtual platform and provide our services entirely digitally. Varsha, could you go back a slide? Can you go back a slide, Varsha? It's too much in the front. Varsha, you've got to go back. It's too much. It's just automatically moving, it looks like. Back, back. That's it. Stay on the students have reached. Okay. Stay on the students have reached the wall of fame. Can you go to the wall of fame slide? Okay, guys, I'm just going to keep talking. We have admitted students at top tier schools like Stanford, Wharton, Harvard, Oxford, Cambridge, National University of Singapore, Singapore University, HKUST, SEEBS in China. I mean, literally, you throw a dart at any top tier university in anywhere in the world, we would have had at least one alumnus there. Also recently published a book, which is why Shazia actually reached out to me. The book is called Break the MBA Code. Varsha, if you're wondering where, go to slide 8, please. And the book talks about everything from why you should go study abroad, where you could potentially go, how do you think about applying to these universities, what it actually takes to get in. And as requested, I'm going to be through the snippets, key takeaways from the book today. Can we go to slide 8, 9? Okay, thank you. As I mentioned, I'm the published author. Varsha, next slide, 9. I'm not sure if you guys can see the screen.
We can see the
Shazia,
screen.
what can you guys see?
We can see the published author
You can? Okay,
page.
Varsha,
but-
can you see published author? Can you go to the next?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you. The book actually has been endorsed by Mr. Mukesh Ambani and is available on Amazon. And as I mentioned, I'm going to now quickly run you through some of the key highlights from the book. Varsha, next slide. Okay, so what's inside the book? It's got a list of do's and don'ts. It's got insights from admissions officers, lots of sample resumes, essays, recommendation letters, etc. We've actually put successful students admitted essays, etc., for people to just get a sense of what it takes to get into these schools and why this is, why is it so difficult to get into these schools. Varsha, next slide. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about timeline, since this is a virtual event and I'm not, sitting face to face. I'm assuming there are people in the room from different stages. So this slide is for people to get a frame of, depending on where you are in your personal life cycle. I thought this slide would help you figure out what you should be doing depending on your life cycle. I'm assuming most people are in the first bracket, 4 to 1 year away from applying. If you're in that bracket, essentially at this point, you should be planning and building your profile, which is what I'm going to share in the coming slides. Varsha, let's go to the next slide. Okay, so this is the plan and build phase that most of you would be in. Now, in the plan and build phase, a couple of very essential things. You need to determine your country of interest. As I mentioned, we help students go to top tier colleges across the globe. Why would, let's say the United States be a better choice for someone, or the United Kingdom, or versus Singapore? Obviously, many factors that vary by personal choices. I strongly suggest not looking at the rankings. A lot of people make the mistake of just saying, I'm going to look up the US news rankings.
Vibha, can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Sorry, your voice is cracking, so people aren't able to understand what you're saying.
Is my voice cracking?
Yeah, I think there's a network issue, or the internet is slow, or some.
Yes, ma'am, it's cracking.
Is it still cracking? I'm right next to my router right now.
Yeah, in between it's cracking.
In between it's cracking. Okay. Should I continue trying to speak?
Yeah.
Okay. I was talking about the different countries and the way to determine which country is best suited for you. Of course, there are multiple factors. Let me just talk about a few. Of course, you can look at the rankings. The rankings will give you a good starting point. But beyond the rankings, try to understand the kind of faculty members teaching at the university. Try to understand the job opportunities available within a country. Immigration is a big one, right? If you're looking to immigrate and move to, let's say, Canada or even Singapore, the regulations in these countries keep changing. But overall, if you're looking to get out of India and live in a different country, of course, currently the Canadian immigration rules are the most flexible. So think about various factors and try to really do your research before. Lots of admissions tests depending on what you're applying for. Obviously, for the undergrad, it's the SAT or the ACT, and for postgrad, it's either the GRE or the Gmat. A lot of business schools are now also accepting the GRE, which will allow you to take the same test and potentially apply for a master's in an engineering domain or a master's in a humanities domain and an MBA. So they standardize the postgraduate test to just the GRE. Research your universities, guys. I can't emphasize this anymore. The best way to understand the university is visit the campus if you can. I visited many campuses, as I mentioned, and really it's only being on the campus that gives you a true feel of what the university has to offer. Speak with alumni of that university, people who are recent graduates, people who graduated 5 years ago, but get a true flavor of a college by speaking to students who are currently at the campus as well. Obviously, attend the admissions events and admissions webinars. But from my perspective, admissions people will, because they have their role is to market the school. They're obviously going to only highlight a certain aspect of the school, but talking to students and alumni has been my most proven method of understanding a university's culture. Of course, you've got to build a stellar profile, and I'm going to take you through a bunch of ideas on how to do that. Do a career test. Always good to know what sort of career orientation you have, and then build your profile. You obviously having a resume is critical today. Even when you're applying for undergraduate programs, a lot of them will ask you to submit your resume, and digital footprint, LinkedIn, YouTube, social media pages, they're all very much public domain and will be used by the universities. Let's go to the next one, please, Asha. Okay, so what are some of the options? I've listed down some postgraduate options for people. Vasha, next. Okay, keep clicking next till all the animations come through. So guys, for people who are unsure about, whether they should do a master's or an MBA, I've put this slide in so you get the fundamental difference. Master's programs will help you become a domain expert, right? So you become an expert in one area, but the program could run for a year, maybe 2 years, depending on the school and the country. But essentially, you will take classes only fully focused on that domain and come out of it with an expertise. So for example, if you did a master's in public policy, you would become an expert in public service, develop tools and skill sets to work in the public domain. And interestingly, a lot of the master's programs will also enable you not, so for example, you take the public policy program, you will be equipped with skills not just to help the public sector and work in government or related agencies. The private sector also opens up to you. So what I want to portray is that you don't have to necessarily think of a master's degree as limited to only that sort of sector. For example, if you do a master's in finance, you could still end up at Amazon because Amazon still needs a really strong finance team. So think about industry and job function as two different things. The skill set you get in the master's will determine your job function is clear. The MBA is used by people to build a broader skill set, right? So for those who want to build an expertise in one domain, go do the masters in sort of computer science, artificial intelligence, languages, masters in creative writing, etc. The MBA will then help you, and a lot of people can do the masters and then do an MBA to top it up, because the MBA will help you to take that skill set and potentially start a business of your own, potentially help you become a manager in a specific field, right? So again, if you're a writer and you've done a master's in an MFA creative writing, and ultimately you want to own and run a publishing house, to own and run a publishing house, you need a business skill set, and the masters will give you sort of a technical skill set. And that combination of technical skill set with an MBA, which gives you and the whole gamut of broad skills is really truly a lethal combination, and sort of lets you set yourself up for success. Next, please. Next. Okay, if you guys want to take a quick screenshot of this, feel free to, but this is essentially all the stuff that you're going to need when you're applying to a program, whether it's undergraduate or a postgraduate. I've just listed it down, so take a second to just absorb this, and you can take a screenshot if you'd like. Okay, next slide. Okay, now we're going to jump to some of the tips on breaking the Ivy League code. As requested, I've taken synopsis of my book and tried to. I'm seeing some hands being raised. Aga Khan team, I'll leave it up to you. If you want to take questions, I'm more than happy to take them now or take them at the end, whatever you decide. Next slide.
There are few questions in Q&A section.
I think, Anis, you can take a few questions
Yeah.
if there are hands up. Let them
Yeah.
ask the questions. The one in the Q&A section, we will take at the end of the session.
Okay.
The hand
Yeah.
raised people, can they just punch their questions into the chat box so I can just read the questions? Okay, guys, a little pop quiz for you. So how early do you think you should start building your profile? Anyone? A, B, C, D. You can just punch in A, B, C, D in the chat. Someone put in a D. Okay. Couple of A's, couple of D's, couple of B's. I got a C in as well. Okay, guys. All right. Thanks for your responses. So, typically if you think about it, right, like from a conventional standpoint, you'd say, okay, I want to go to a degree. Let's say I'll start thinking about my final year of college. Exactly as Asif and Naseem, etc. are mentioning, you probably think like a year or 2 years before you apply. But the honest answer is like, I started looking at my undergraduate and business school degrees more than 4 years before I actually applied. Seems a little bizarre, but the fact of the matter is when you apply to undergraduate programs, everything you've done in your high school, starting 9th grade onwards, is part of the application. They're going to actually ask you to send in your grades, 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th. And you've got all your extracurricular activities, everything you've done 9th onwards. For business school and for the master's programs, they will ask for your college transcripts. So your college life, which is essentially 3 or 4 years of your degree, depending on what degree you do, plus all your extracurricular engagements on campus are also important. Also, if you've done something stellar in your undergraduate or high school years, like if let's say at 15, you your MBA 10 years or 12 years from then, if it's an accomplishment that's so stellar, you might even use that in your application to a master's program. So how early should you start? Start early, start as soon as you can. Let's take the next slide. Okay, some of Danisha, I've seen your questions. Some of these will get answered along the way. Okay, so as I mentioned, start building your profile as soon as you can. You got to ensure that whatever positioning, let's say you're applying for a master's in marketing, make sure your profile validates that you're committed to that field from an early stage. So for example, if you can, let's say you're doing a BBA degree, make sure you're doing a concentration in marketing, a club, make sure you hold the role of like chief of marketing. So try to build an overarching positioning statement, and that validates everything you have done so far. That's what really helps you make the school believe what you're saying and validates, your commitment to a certain field. And of course, I love internships. Look for a range of internships because internships always enrich you. It's a myth that you can't do internships when you're still in the 10th grade or the 11th grade. Most of my 9th, 10th, 11th graders are doing internships. Even if they're small internships, if they're through a family friend or a personal connection of someone please do internships. It really helps broaden your mindset. Next slide. Okay. Standardized tests. I don't know if anyone here has already taken the Gmat, GRE, SAT, etc. Firstly, make a firm decision between which test you want to take. I'm not a big fan of flip-flopping, like taking the SAT ones and then doing the ACT and then trying. So the best way to do this is do the free online test. You get mock tests available easily online. Maybe take 1 or 2 or 3 SATs and 1 or 2 or 3 ACT tests and just run through the format. Essentially, the content of both tests is fairly similar, but it's just a matter of the flow and see what works for you. Pick one and then keep going for one. Even if you're retaking, I suggest retaking the same format. Preparation time, I get asked this question all the time. I say at least minimum of 2 months. Obviously, this is very personalized, depends on how you study patterns, how much you can absorb. but keep a minimum 2-month gap for your preparation. Assume it's at least 2 months. Math and English fundamentals, guys, that's what these tests are really about. If you've stopped reading a while back, I strongly suggest go pick up that book again. If you've got an aversion to numbers, I suggest overcoming that. And it's fundamental math, basic 8th, 9th, 10th standard math, but just applied very differently. What you shouldn't do is get obsessive about test scores, because unlike in India, in the West, when you apply to these programs, there's no cutoff. They won't say that you have to get a 770 to get into Stanford. Like in India, it's like either you're on the 98th percentile and you go to St. Stephen's, or you don't, right? It's as simple as that. Here in the West, the test score is just one more component. Obsess about it, but of course, as Indians, we have an expectation to deliver very strongly on test scores. So unless something in your profile is super compelling, as I mentioned, if you did swim the English Channel, or you're an Olympic gold medalist or whatever, then of course or even like a national level badminton champion, if you're doing something really extreme and so stellar, then you can expect some leniency when they are evaluating your academic profile. So don't give up on applying to your dream school. As I said, there's always a range of acceptable scores. Next, please. All right, let's do some pop quizzing on how long should the resume be. I'll give you guys a second, put in your answers. Okay, I see some B's. C, D, C, or A. Aman, Padam, Shi. Aman, pick one, man, come on. Lots of D's. B, D's. Ilyan Parmar, one pager. One pager is a B. Okay, good going, guys. I'm seeing obviously a variety of answers, but the majority of you have answered B, and that is actually the right answer. Why is that, right? You might think like, why does the length even matter? As long as I'm able to showcase my accomplishments, that's what they really care about. Varsha, next slide. What the way to think about this is like, and no one has time, right? We're all like living super busy lives. So whether you're applying to school or applying for a job, the interviewer must know in one page the key highlights of your life. They only have so much mind space to absorb. So as long as you can maintain the length of your resume at to define it to one page, it's just easier for them to absorb your story. How do you do that? Of course, you need to be selective about what you're projecting in the resume. You make sure that you have divided the resume in the right sections, right? So I go back to my previous example about if you are showcasing that you're really expert in a domain, right? So if you're a marketing expert, maybe you can have an extra section in your resume that says marketing contributions or marketing achievements, and then put all those in that one section. So be intelligent in terms of framing the different sections on the resume. Entirely up to you how you do it, but you want to project a story and project a personality through your resume. And that's really what makes a resume stand out. For those of you who don't have a resume, we do have a free tool on our website. If you go to free resources and tools, we have a resume builder tool. You can just go in there, punch in your details and keep hitting enter. And at the end, it will spit out a fully formatted resume for you. So feel free to give that a shot. We also have a free profile audit tool if you want to just get a quick profile audit. We've designed something interesting that you might want to take a look at. Try to condense your accomplishments into crisp sentences, please, because brevity is critical, and it goes back to no one having time, right? Also, if you can see in this slide, all our sentences start with what I call action verbs. So for all of you who are not familiar with action verbs, write, use, maintain, condense, ensure. These are action verbs which showcase some sort of progress or movement, right? Which is what you want to convey in a resume. So always open your bullet points with action verbs. It really makes it compelling. Next slide. All right. College selection, I spoke about this. As I mentioned, don't go for only the rankings. I asked you to look faculty members at the school, admissions officers, current students, alumni, websites, of the schools, webinars. I mean, there's so many different ways of understanding a college. Make sure you gather all that information and then see what is the right fit for you. You know, you might get into Stanford and feel like, hey, it's actually not the right kind of school for me. Just because it's a top ranked school doesn't mean it's the right school for you. Okay, let's go to the next slide. I just want to save time for questions. All right, essays. I don't know if any of you have already applied. Or can I share a good resume? Yes. I can't share one off the bat right now, but if you go to our website, free resources, sample resumes, we've put some sample resumes on the website. Sample essays are also on the website. Sample reco letters are also on the website. And they're all in the book as well. If you have the book, then you should be able to get easy access to those as well. Essays, very important to understand the schools, right? So all the stuff we spoke about on the slide before, like the ways of understanding a college, as you are doing your research on the colleges, make sure you write it all down. Because when you're applying to the school in the application, most schools will have an essay topic which says, what about our school interests you? Or why do you think this is the right school for you? And in this sort of answer, you want to be as specific as you can and showcase all the research you've done about the school. So if I was writing that essay, I would say, hey, when I visited your campus in 2018, I met this current student, Jacqueline, whoever, who talked to me about the marketing club there. And then I also met the president of the marketing club. You know, so they really, what tickles them is the fact that you've bothered to do extensive research on their school and research via different methods and modes. So do your research and make sure it comes through in the essays. I don't know if people are familiar with the STAR format of writing essays, but it's essentially situation, task, action, and result. So you always want to write an essay which showcases a situation, the action you took behind that sort of situation, and then what was the outcome or result of what you did, right? So it's a very simplistic format of writing an essay, but a very, very powerful one. Don't try to use big words. You know, just using vocabulary, checking dictionaries or thesaurus for like a fancy word, not needed. Keep it simple, keep it accessible. Don't use any humor or self-deprecating humor. You know, humor is a very tricky one because jokes are interpreted differently in different cultures. I also stay away largely from political, religious affiliations because you don't never know who's reading your application or the other end. So as far as possible, I would stay away from making any sort of strong political statement if I can. All right, let's go to the next slide. I'm speaking a little fast, guys, because I see there's a lot of questions in that Q&A chat, and I want to make sure we address those. All right, pop quiz number 3. You guys can read the question. My uncle is the CEO of a large company. Should I ask him to write my reco? How many yeses and how many nos? And how many I don't knows? Oh, okay. We have lots of no's. Nilima says yes. Ali says yes. Adil says yes. Yes, only if you can talk about me really well. Thank you, Shifa. And thank you, Shreya. Yes, but after working under him, that's even better. All right. This is a smart bunch of people in the webinar. I don't think I should be addressing you guys, man. You know the answers. I'm going to give got the right answer. Varsha, go to the next slide. Thanks, Shreya, and thanks, Shifa also. Very close, Shifa. Thank you all the others also for putting in your answers. Varsha thank you for the slide. Okay, so what matters in a recommendation, right? The most important thing, and that's why the pop quiz was centered around that, is the context of your relationship with the recommender. I mean, even if you know like Narendra Modi or whatever, right? If you know the president of the country, the prime minister, unless you've directly worked with them, worked under them, worked with them on a project, you know, in case you're family friends with someone who has been a personal mentor to you for the last 10 years, you know, there has to be a really strong connection. If you randomly put in a heavyweight recommendation letter without context, the schools find it puzzling and it's actually a big turnoff for them. For those of us in family businesses, becomes a little bit trickier, right? Because you're like, well, actually, my dad runs the company. He can't write the reco. So my next best guess is my uncle. Well, in some sense, it's true. And maybe if you're really forced to, you might have to do that in a family business situation only. But in a family business situation, I also suggest getting letters from maybe investors, mentors, board members, suppliers, customers. Yeah, I just gave you 5 different categories of people. So if you can, then use those. Please always give your recommenders enough heads up. Invariably, every year, the deadlines are in January, a lot of them. And on Christmas Eve, people are emailing their recommenders. And I think it's really unfair and a bit selfish that you're expecting them to write something for you over the Christmas holidays and submit it to the schools in 5 or 7 days. So build a relationship with, your bosses through internships, people you work with on projects, of course, your current bosses currently, and give them enough heads up, so they have a sense of when this is going to come and hit them, and so that they can do a solid recommendation letter for you. And always give your recommenders talking points, guys. Sometimes you feel a little inhibited and you feel like, hey, I don't want to influence what my recommender is going to write. Is this okay or not to do? Honestly, everyone does it. It's best to do it, because if I were to write a recommendation for someone, I would just prefer it if they gave me some talking points, and I could then go ahead and craft a recommendation for them. So feel free to approach your recommender early, be very open with them, and list down what you want them to address. All right, next slide. All right. I don't know how many of you have interviewed for schools. You probably have, some of you probably have interviewed for work interviews. Now, there is a big distinction between work-related interviews and college interviews. The difference is a lot of the college interviews, firstly, especially for undergrad, very casual. Even business school interviews are not so stiff. Of course, colleges are looking for not just your professional accomplishments as a job would, but a lot of weightage on academic achievements, because you are going from one academic institute to another. So I would strongly recommend that you balance your description of yourself between academic achievements, professional achievements, community work, extracurricular, social service, all of that. In a work interview, you might skim through some of it and then really focus on your core work achievements. Always ensure that you are, in India, we again have a tendency of being a little humble or modest. Do remember that the interview is ultimately a sales job. You have to be able to very boldly and confidently, without sounding sort of abrasive or egotistical, be able to talk about. Invariably, every year I'm dealing with lots of students who are unable to, they say, hey, I sound like I'm bragging, and I can't say this, I feel awkward talking about myself. Well, get used to it. If you're not going to be proud about your accomplishments and communicate them well, you can't expect the university to be proud about having you on that campus. And the last point I'll shout out here is, you're expected to go and prepare for an interview. So I find that a lot of times people get interviews and they're like, hey, I have my interview tomorrow and I'll be doing it. And I just say, no, you can't, because, you're not prepared. You're expected to go in prepared and rehearsed to the interview. We have a lot of sample questions on our website. Again, you can see them. Those are also free. For anyone who works with us, we give them a list of almost 200 interview preparation questions that we ask them to skim through and prepare if possible prior to the interview. Yeah, 200. So that's the kind of preparation I'm talking about. So that when you go into that room, you're not stumped by any questions that you get asked. Yep. Okay, I think I'm going to move on given the time capacity. So Vasha, next slide. All right, guys, here are some statistics for you guys. Again, feel free to use, to take a screenshot of this if it helps you. Just absorb the numbers for a second. Okay, I'll run you guys through the slides so you know what to focus on. So the key thing here, like, firstly, I want to show you the acceptance rate column, right? These are undergraduate statistics, guys. Now, if you look at some of these numbers, they range from like 15%, let's say, to 4-5%, right? Now, coming from an Indian perspective, like where we're used to like the chartered accountants having a 1% rate and IIT admissions being only 1% of people who apply get in, 14-15%, even 5% seems like a big number, right? Now, what I want you to American college statistic.
Vibha, we can't hear you. We can't hear you again.
What's the last thing you heard, Shazia?
we just heard that I'll run you through the 14-15%.
Okay,
Yeah.
you got that. Okay, I just said one sentence after that. Okay, perfect. Thank you. What I was trying to convey is that sometimes the numbers might seem a bit inflated from an Indian perspective because we're used to looking at 1% acceptance rates, right, in India for the IITs and stuff. The difference is that there is a massive self-selection bias that occurs when you're applying to top-tier schools, because the application process, as I had shown you all the slides before, it entails so many things: the reco letters, the essays, the resume, the achievements, the scores. A lot of people do not actually end up applying to top-tier schools. So you're applying only with a bunch of people who feel like they've got what it takes to get in. Therefore, the numbers might seem a bit inflated. The second column is super critical because, again, as I had mentioned, there's no cutoff rates for application, either in terms of the ACT, SAT, or your high school GPA. So see, if you see the number at Cornell, only 82% of the people are within the top 10% of their high school, which means roughly 20% people weren't even in the top 10% of their high school, but they still got into Cornell. So these slides are essentially put to encourage people who are not, sometimes if you've not got the 95% and you say, hey, actually, I'm not going to apply because I'm never going to get in. I just want you to snap out of that mindset. Even look at the range of ACT scores, right? It goes from 31 to 35. So it's not like you only have to be a 34, 35 to be able to crack the school. Okay, next slide. And we put in some statistics for the MBA admissions as well. Largely similar, right? If you see the range, it's going from 580 to 800, 690, 620 even at Kellogg. So same message here, guys, that it's not a cutoff based system. And the other message here is I've put in the work experiences because I get asked this all the time saying, look, I just want to go for my MBA right after I finish undergrad. And, can I go with no work experience? Well, they do have deferred MBA programs, or what they call, sort of silver scholar or 2+2, depending on the college, where you apply when you're in your final year of college, and you can get into the school but defer your admission for 2 years, sometimes 3 years, and then start your program. But generally, business school is looking for 4 or 5 years of experience. So unless there's a real pressing urgency to go to finish off your degree, I suggest going. I went when I was 4.5. By that point, you've got a pretty good sense
Sorry,
of...
Vibha, we lost you there again. So we just heard that you went when you were, we didn't hear how long after your undergrad.
I went with 4.5 years of experience.
Okay.
And it's really helpful to do that because I went with enough perspective and understanding of what I wanted to get out of my program. The people who end up going straight from school, high school, college, and then the MBA, they've not had enough full-time professional experience. They've not had enough time to understand their journeys. So it's difficult for them to fathom what the end of the rainbow looks like, right? So since I had already been through enough experiences, I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I knew I wanted to be in the education space. So I used my MBA degree to do just that. Yeah, so I would strongly encourage giving it 4 or 5 years before you apply to school. Next slide, please. Okay, so global admissions, we put in some data from European schools, Asian schools, NCR, Rotman, HK, UST, etc. Similar messaging, I just also want to highlight, like if you look at the schools in Europe, NCR with 6 years, Singapore management 6 years, showing you that the work experience requirement is actually even higher for these countries. Yeah, so just do that as your take that as your key learning from this slide. Okay, next slide. Okay, this is our last slide. I'll take the Q&A and then we can, I'm going to just run through this quickly and then we can take the Q&A and we'll shut the presentation. So as I mentioned in the beginning, we do work with students one-on-one. So if any of you are looking for personalized counseling sessions, just get in touch with us at help@reachiv.com. We work on applications, etc. As I mentioned, we do counseling, applications, interview preparation, all the things that I've mentioned in the book, we actually provide those services. We also do have a scholarship that's currently open. This will be our 7th year of running the scholarship, and through the scholarship, we award 10 students every year free guidance from our end. It's just part of our CSR. Scholarships actually open right now, so if any of you feel like you might need some mentoring or help, please apply to the scholarship. There's an interview process, and if you make it through, you will be one of our 10 lucky winners for this year. Lots of events. If you register on our website, we would add you to our mailing list. We do several webinars with admissions officers from top tier schools. We bring in alumni to talk about their journeys. I bring in career experts. This Tuesday, I have on my Instagram an expert from the fitness industry who's going to talk about her journey in setting up a digital fitness business. And of course, if anyone needs any help with partners, we have partners in terms of housing, loans, other finances, lots of different partners, immigration partners. We could put you in touch with people, so that we're just essentially trying to provide a 360-degree platform for anyone who needs anything to do with careers or study abroad. All right. I think we can move to the questions, and Varsha, you can log out of the slides, and thank you for sharing the slides. Okay, let's take the questions, and my apologies for the Zoom connections. I'm not sure what was happening, but I think we ran through the presentation effectively, and I'm going to, with Shiza's permission, just take the questions in the order that they appeared in, starting with Danisha Pasaya. Varsha, Aga Khan team, you can just log this out. Okay. Should I start with Danisha's question here from the chat?
Yeah, so I can take you through the questions. I mean, we have quite a few from the beginning. So we're going to try and somebody wanted to know at the beginning of the session, how did you get into Harvard for your undergrad?
Okay, can you just give me the name of the person now, please?
Actually, it's an anonymous attendee, so I have not been able to capture their name on the screen.
All right, hi Anonymous. So I actually didn't go to Harvard for my undergrad. I went there for my postgrad degree. What it takes to get in, whether it's the undergrad or postgrad, I'm just going to answer this question for everyone, regardless of degree, so you can all pick up on it. Very broadly, especially for undergraduate and MBA programs, the schools are looking for 4 different things, right? So if you do a profile evaluation with us, we would take your profile and bucket it into 4 different sections. Number 1 being academics, where we would understand your academic background. So what do you need to get into Harvard or MIT or whatever? Ideal profile would be strong academics. So let's just take a sample. Anonymous, can you tell me what degree you're thinking of? And then I could potentially help answer the question, tailor make it to you. But I'm assuming undergraduate, let's say computer science, right? So for computer science undergrad degree, top scores, your extended essay or your any other research paper that you're doing in school, ideally to be computer science related. Basically a whole bunch of academic achievements. Next bucket would be your professional experience, anything you've done, internships you've had, any projects you worked on relating to that domain. Extracurricular activities, in addition to computer science, what do you do for fun? Schools are looking to recruit people who know how to have fun. All work and no play makes you a dull person, so we don't want that. And the last bucket is community involvement, social service. What have you done for the world outside of your own personal pursuits? So that's how I would broadly bucket anyone's profile. It's super competitive to get into these schools, right? So what you have to always keep in mind is, like, what are you doing that most people in your high school who are also applying are not doing, right? So if the whole high school is going to do an exchange program in France, for example, then even though that's a kind of cool thing to do, it's not really going to make you stand out. So the trick with profile building is really, like, having stuff that's unique and makes you stand out from amongst the crowd. Anyone of course, the academic bucket is very important. The professional bucket is also very important. The community service and extracurricular can take a bit of a backseat. For example, if you're going to get a PhD in, the post-independence colonial history or whatever, no one really cares whether you play you do scuba diving or you do whatever. They don't really care about your extracurricular, right? They're really looking for then only academic and professional work experiences to validate your profile. So it varies by degree a little bit. So just remember that undergrad and MBA looking for more holistic profiles, masters and PhD looking for more sort of core or focus related profiles. Okay, let's take the next one.
So the next question is for an experienced person working at a managerial level with 10 years plus of experience, will it be worth it to take an MBA, and or what kind of courses should they pursue?
Okay, great. So I think it's I see the questions. Okay, anonymous again. Okay, 10 years plus conventional MBA programs like the ones we spoke about are out for you. Most schools are looking at anywhere from, as I mentioned, 2 to 9 years of experience, either 10 plus years. Mark, there are lots of other programs still accessible. Executive education programs, executive MBAs, something called the Sloan Fellowship at MIT. So look at other programs because the MBA is not really going to be worth your time. And honestly, it's not even accessible to you. You've sort of crossed that bridge. Every year, I would say business schools maybe take 1 or 2 people with 10 plus years of experience, but it's extremely rare. It's also a lot of times people who've served in the military or been doing something for in our case the Navy or whatever, where you've spent 4 or 5 years doing some sort of engagement, and then your actual work experience is only 1 or 2 years. Then you might still get in with 10 plus years. But generally, look at executive level MBA programs. Insha Mawani, is Canada a proper place to do MBA?
So, Vibha, just since you're on the topic, I have another question related to that.
Okay.
How does one prepare for an executive MBA? And you've already answered what is the correct age to do one. And how does one simultaneously cope with work and the executive program?
Okay, great. Awesome questions. So how do you prepare? You prepare pretty much the same categories I had mentioned earlier. For executive MBA, also they're going to look at your academic, work, community, and extracurricular. So these are like the classic 4 buckets for you to take away. However, for the executive MBA, again, they're going to focus more on your work accomplishments, less on extracurricular community. And the good news is less on the GMAT, GRE, etc. as well, because a lot of executive programs do not even ask for a test. These are designed for people with 10 to 15 years of experience, and they have an understanding that at that point you might not want to even take a standardized test because you're so out of practice. Some schools do require them, and most schools do not actually require them. So when you do your research, just make sure to check the requirements. But broadly, for the second question about how do you prepare while you're still working, the good news is that they're basically looking to see your professional accomplishments, right? So they're looking to see what sort of leadership skills you have, how big a team have you worked on, what are the accounts you worked on, what are the brands you worked with, have you lived in a different country, so those are the kind of things. So in some sense it's very much aligned to professional success, and that's how you would typically try to position yourself also as someone who's a strong mid to senior level manager. That's what they're really looking for. Shall we go to the next one?
Yes. So the next one is Canada a proper place to do MBA? I think we can club
Okay.
that with is work experience important to do MBA in Canada? So we can take both of them together.
Okay, sure. Thank you. Okay, thank you, Insha and Aftab, for your questions. Okay, so in terms of Canada, I mean, first of all, when you say proper place, I'm not sure how you would define proper. In terms of I'm just going to rephrase to say, is it a country you would consider to apply to? And my answer is very much yes. Of course, it depends on what you're looking to get out of your MBA program. As I mentioned in the beginning, Canada is very open to immigration, most flexible immigration laws in the world. However, the best way to segue into Canadian immigration is by doing a higher degree there. They have a strong propensity towards people who've studied in that country. I have a lot of students who want to immigrate. They apply to Canadian schools, finish the program. work there, and they very quickly end up getting their residencies or their permits to live there. So great place. Very few schools, right? That's the challenge. There aren't that many top tier MBA schools. So inshallah, that would be my only concern, that how many schools do I apply to? If I think on the top of my head, there's like 5-7 schools that are worth your time or money. And what was the other question?
Question
okay.
was just 1 second.
Question was, do you need work experience to do an MBA in Canada?
MBA.
Yeah. Shoe Lake, York, the top schools there are also looking for the same 4 or 5 years of work experience. Garima, feel free to jump in whenever you want to answer, please.
Yeah, so if you're looking for a degree which doesn't require work experience, then typically European universities, universities in the UK, they offer a degree called Masters in Management. So that is typically a pre-experience management degree, which doesn't go into as much depth as the MBA. But if you're looking at, if you don't have any business experience or knowledge, and if you're looking for like a 1-year long degree, just give you some experience and maybe work in a new geography, then that can be a good option. But typically an MBA program requires 3 to 9 years of work experience, depending on what country you apply to.
Okay, thank you very
Thanks,
much. Next
Karima.
question.
Which one is a better preference, an MBA with some major or a dual 2+2 degree?
Okay, Garima, you want to take that?
Yeah. So I think the short answer to this is that it depends on what do you want to get out of the degree. So like Vibha mentioned that if somebody is very sure that they want to do education, if they want to do a startup in education, then maybe applying for an MBA with an education master's might make sense. Or if for example, I studied public policy at University of Oxford. So in my class, I had a lot of people who applied for a dual degree in an MBA plus public policy. So if you want to do work in the social impact sector, but if you want to say work on the implementation side or on the managerial side, then it makes sense to club the 2 degrees, get them together in 2 years, and go for a dual degree. I didn't exactly get what you mean by a master's, like an MBA with major, but I think you just mean a regular MBA.
Okay, thanks, Karima. Let's take the next question. Please, can you give some insights on environmental studies as a career option? I'm pursuing economics and applied mathematics, and I want to have a career path in environmental studies. I think the same person is also later on asked, which country should you consider while pursuing environmental studies?
Okay. So I think there are a bunch of career options which open up if you're looking at environment studies / the sustainability sort of industry. It's becoming a huge industry now. So if you have a background in economics and applied mathematics, definitely modeling, like climate change modeling, all sorts of modeling is something that you can look at. But other than that, there are a bunch of different things that you can do with an environment studies degree. Like you can, go work with the multilaterals. World Bank has a proper sustainability wing. Then UN has different agencies, UNFCCC, and also like UN agencies in general hire people, um, uh, with with a proper background in environment studies. You can work in a think tank space. There are a lot of think tanks, advocacy groups, non-for-profits which are coming up. In the US, you have a lot of also advocacy politics around sustainability, environment, green politics. So there are a bunch of different career options that you can explore within environment studies. The country, I guess it really, you can go to, if you're looking at doing the degree from the top universities, then you end up going to US, UK, Canada, maybe Australia, and these are the countries where environment studies in general has matured as a career option. So like in the UK, for example, a lot of private companies these days hire for ESG consultants with the environment studies background and some skills in economics, applied econometrics. So that could be an interesting space to explore.
Thanks, Karima, for that. We have the next person who's asked a question is Rinkesh Virani, and I think Rinkesh has asked a couple of more questions below. So, firstly, for working professionals who are planning for an MBA a couple of years down the line, how would you recommend one to evaluate their profile readiness for a dream Ivy League school?
Okay, I'll take that. Rinkesh, I already addressed that. If you just listen back on the conversation, I mentioned the 4 buckets, right? So evaluating your profile readiness, academics, work experience, extracurricular and sport, community and social service impact. Take the free tool on our website. We have a free profile auditor, so you can just go play with it and answer the questions, and it'll throw out a report for you. Of course, if you work with any of us on, when you look at your own profile and you say, hey, I have a 93% from such and such college, you try to audit your profile yourself, you might get a good sense, but because we do this professionally, obviously, we have a larger worldview and we know what is going on in your peer group. So always helpful to get a professional evaluation that can tell you how you stack up against other people within your age group for a certain set of schools. Should I read his next question? Shajay, you want to give us the next
Sure, you can. Yeah. So the next question is, how does a startup experience fare with the admission committee versus an experience from like an established multinational? I think it's a very good question because a lot of people face this, yeah, dilemma nowadays.
fabulous question?
Sorry, Vibha, we can't hear you
It's actually a
clearly.
dilemma.
Vibha,
Can
I
you hear me
can't.
now?
Still breaking.
Okay, then Garima, take it over.
Yeah,
Garima, you want to take it?
yeah. I'll take this one, Vibha. So, Rinkesh, good question. And whether you work in a startup or in an established multinational, what schools look for is the kind of impact you've left, in the role that you're doing. So, what really matters is, what was your job profile and how did you end up, executing that and impacting one, the company, but also the larger ecosystem. So they will look at how ahead, for instance, they look at how ahead are you of your peers. So if you're working in an established multinational, they look at whether you had accelerated promotions. If you're working in a startup experience, then they look for what kind of opportunities came your way, and whether you lapped onto those opportunities, and whether you grew personally and in the process grew the startup as well. So either way, I mean, startup experience can fare very well as compared with an experience with an established multinational, provided you're leaving your stamp in the company.
Thanks, Garima. We have a couple of more questions from Rinkesh.
Rinkesh, just wanted to say that, one way or the other, whether you do the startup or the multinational, what they're looking for is impact. They're looking for big impact. So uh, what I really love is profiles that have 1 or 2 years of multinational experience, where you've worked with a large company and you're able to understand how big companies work and understand their systems. And then you spend a year or two with your own startup or working with someone else's startup, because of course startups push you in very different ways, and that combined experience is actually lethal. So if you're at that point where you're crafting out your future, and you have a clean slate, that's how I would craft it out. First 1 or 2 years with a big company, and then follow topped up with working with someone else's startup. And then just to give you an extension of that, then ultimate goal would be to have your own startup. Yeah, so if you can do those 3 things, then business schools will really love your profile.
So the next question of Rinkesh is, again, I think it's a quite a good question, is how exactly does an admission committee gauge the social media presence, and what can be done in the short to medium term to build an appealing digital footprint? Vibha?
Garima, are you taking it?
Yeah, so Rinkesh, I mean, there are a bunch of social media links, which I mean, so basically, typically a school application requires you to fill in your social media links, okay, in the application. And they definitely, I mean, especially look at your LinkedIn profile. So that is one place that you should definitely, uh, have, up to date and working in your favor. Like LinkedIn has a lot of different options. You can, upload project reports, you can upload recommendations, then it has a skills tab. It gives you options to, add like very appealing, crisp um, sort of description about the work that you have done. So like make the most of, all the features which are available on LinkedIn, and to make it look more appealing. And typically, I mean, what I suggest is, all the columns which are provided in LinkedIn should be filled. Okay, so you should have fill in your volunteering experience, fill in your awards section, and like give some bio about the work that you have done, add some reports. If you have photographs, add them. And also, it's with LinkedIn, it also helps to, regularly update your feed. So if there is a promotion, or if you've written something up, then it just, or if you've been featured in a newspaper, or if somebody has interviewed you, so it just helps to, publish all of that onto your LinkedIn feed. In addition to that, the other social media presence, it really depends on you. If you're big on social media, then, whatever you're doing, just use it to your advantage. And, you can add like bits about your what kind of work you're doing across all your social media. So through the bios, through regular updates, you can do all of that. But definitely LinkedIn is something that you should have up to date.
And thank you, Garima. I'll just add a little to what Garima was saying. Essentially, just try to make sure that whatever you're projecting in the application form is consistent with what I will see on your digital footprint. Exactly as Garima, make sure the LinkedIn bio is completely filled out, but it has to be filled out exactly identically to your application, right? Your resume says something, and then your LinkedIn resume says something else. Also, the other social media platforms like Instagram, etc., which are more sort of creative and fun expressions. Let's say one of your hobbies is to play music, or it's to paint. Then make sure if I go on your Instagram feed, you like the guitar,
Vibha, your
and lots
voice
of
is
your
breaking. We can't hear you clearly.
sketches.
Yeah, I'll just try to sum up what Vibha was trying to say. So she's saying that
Consistency is critical, Rinkesh. If there's one word, you got.
yeah, Vibha, your voice is breaking. Hello. Yeah, so Rinkesh, what Vibha was trying to say is, you can also use platforms like Instagram, Pinterest, or other platforms to your advantage by, showcasing.
I'm not saying anything. All I was trying to tell Rinkesh is the consistency.
Vibha, I'm sorry, we can't hear you at all. Can you hear us?
I can hear everyone. I can hear everything.
Okay,
Yeah, we
so
can
we
hear you
couldn't hear
now.
you at all. How about let's move on to the next question, because we're kind of, it's already 4:17 and we have quite a few of them. The next part of his question is quite vague. So Rinkesh, I think the scholarship depends on school to school, right, Garima?
Yeah, Rinkesh,
Right.
the scholarship depends from university to university. It also depends from the degree to degree. So, for example, I studied public policy, and 80% of my class was on some sort of a scholarship. Whereas if you go to an MBA school, the ratios would change. Maybe 10% of the class would be on some sort of a scholarship. So the scholarship avenues change, from the kind of degree and the kind of university that you're applying to. But typically, for an MBA program, scholarships are highly merit based, and fewer in number. If you're going to apply for humanities, then you have your chances of getting a scholarship increase slightly. There are programs like the Chevening in the UK, then there are programs like Commonwealth in the UK, Fulbright in the US, which you can look at if you're planning to apply for a master's degree in general.
Okay, the next questions we have is from Danisha Pasaya. When is the right time to apply? Now, 2021, or next year? after the stress of the pandemic is reduced. Are you applying? Danisha is, I think, yes, it's for an MBA program.
Okay. So, Danisha, the general rule of thumb is, apply when your profile is looking the strongest. Okay. So, if you think that your profile is ready to apply for 2021, I would say go ahead, apply. Of course, with the pandemic, the situation is, I mean, it's working in favor of some, not working in favor of some. But you should base the decision on how strong is your profile looking in 2021. If you think it's ready, basis all the parameters that Vibha has discussed so far. If you think your academics are stellar, your work experience, you have enough work experience now, and if you think you can make the most out of an MBA, then I would encourage you to apply in 2021. If you think that you still need some more work on your application, then go ahead, defer your applications by a year.
And the second part of her question, I think, is that she only has a couple of years of job experience, and I think she's wondering whether she can still take a chance at applying to a top tier university. And Garima, if you want to know what's missing from your profile, you'll have to share it with them, which you can contact them on reachiv.com.
Exactly. So then,
Danisha, yeah.
yeah, Danisha, you can reach out to us on Reach IV. There's also a free profile auditor tool. But basis, I'm just reading out what you have, that you have 1 to 2 years of full-time work experience. And like Vibha has already shared, schools typically look for 3 to 4 years, like US schools in general typically look for 3 to 4 years of full-time work experience. So you probably can wait for another year. Or two, depending on what quality of work you are doing. But if you're thinking ahead of the MBA, what I would suggest is, start building your profile early. If you have another year or two, in your work, whatever your work place, then, try to get that promotion, or try to get that secondment opportunity abroad, or, try to get that big project, which can really help you showcase your skills.
One more question from Danisha is that what if you apply for the early admission deadline? Do you have a higher chance of getting in or a higher chance of scholarship?
Yeah, definitely, Danisha. That's a definite yes. So you should, in fact, try to apply to an earlier deadline, provided your application is ready. But yeah, definitely, if you're thinking so ahead of it, definitely target to apply in the first round.
Hi,
Next question we have. Hi, Vibha. We're glad to have you back.
a deferred MBA program. There are two different things. Is she asking early?
Yeah, so early admission. No. She's asking about the early admissions, which happen like before the main deadline, right?
No.
Early
Okay,
deadline.
so then no. Let's Garima just explain the deferred MBA versus the early deadline. What Garima answered was like, as applying as early as you can is always advantageous.
Okay.
But within the admission cycle. But I'm not a big proponent of just applying early if you're not still ready.
Yeah.
So a lot of people will say, hey, I'm just going to apply in round one because my chances go up. The honest answer is don't apply in round one if you're expecting a promotion between October to December, or you're going to be closing a big project, or you might have a retake of your GRE. So don't try to sort of run the rat race if you're not ready. But if you really want to apply in round one, then make sure all this is done and you're ready. So when I applied Wharton round one because I was ready at that point to apply. So while it might be advantageous, it's not going to be advantageous to you if you're not ready. It's as simple as that. So think of deadlines in terms of best to apply when you're ready. Garima, you want to take the deferred MBA one? She was asking about, is it easier to get into deferred MBA programs as compared to regular MBA programs? Of course, the answer is no. So you want to just explain that to her?
Yeah, so basically a deferred MBA is that, you apply for a regular MBA degree, but you apply in the last year of your undergrad. So what happens is that if you get an acceptance from the school, you work for 2 to 3 years, but you have a guarantee, like you sort of have a guarantee from the school that you can go join the MBA program after 2 to 3 years of working. So you basically get like a secured admit in your final year of undergrad. And like Vibha has already mentioned, it doesn't mean that getting it admit in deferred MBA is easier than a regular MBA. In fact, it might be more difficult if you don't have a lot of extracurriculars in your undergrad, if you don't have good grades. But the general rule of thumb is, like Vibha was also mentioning, apply when your profile is looking the strongest, when you think you're ready. So if you think you're ready, you can apply for a deferred MBA program, work for a few years, and then go to your MBA. I can't see the
Hi,
question.
sorry. Karima, we'll take the next question. The next question is also, I think, something crucial that a lot of us feel is what if we don't have any achievements? How do we then prepare for like a top tier school? Say you work, I don't know if you're anonymous, are you working, are you not? But this is something I've also asked felt time and
Yeah,
again.
yeah. I mean, it's a question that we all ask ourselves at some point in time. But I guess the word achievement is quite subjective. Like what I would say is, start with figuring out what degree you want to apply to, and then see what kind of relevant sort of impact you have created, for that degree. For example, if you want to apply for an MBA, then just see if you have any internships or any work experience, which is managerial. And within that work experience or internship, have you left a stamp? Have you left any impact? Have you done something? Have you contributed in a meaningful way, which only you could have done in that organization? And that is the definition of achievement. Now, it's hard to believe that you don't have any achievements, but if you really think that you don't have any achievements, then I would say just start ASAP and get those achievements. But again, like, the achievement is a very subjective word, and just spend some time figuring out what degree you want to apply to and what achievements are relevant sort of to that degree.
I'll
So
also just add, guys, that sometimes I get two spectrums of people. The people who are actually super achievers, but self-assess themselves as like, hey, actually, I haven't really done anything great. I have no achievements, but when I look at the profile, I'm just like, oh my God, wow, this is actually really stellar. And I get people who have not really done much, but they actually think they're like, oh my God, like I've done all these great things. So just getting an unbiased, realistic perspective from someone an outsider who can look at your profile and categorically tell you whether these are achievements or not, is obviously very helpful. And also how you project an achievement is very important, right?
Yeah.
The application process allows for essays. And if you ask me, in a nutshell, an essay is just a story, right? So how compelling is a story? Can you tell me a compelling story about what you did last night? It could be as ordinary as you ate dinner and you fell asleep, but the way that story is projected and worded and positioned is what will make a real difference. So it's not only the achievement, it's also the projection of that achievement that's very critical.
Exactly. Even like certain decisions can showcase achievement if you project them well.
Shazia, are you there? Is there anything else?
yeah, sorry, there are a lot of other questions. So we're just gonna skim through a couple of them, quick ones. Uh, I think that there's a question that says, does Reach IV provide assistance for MBA deferred admissions? I'm currently in my final year and planning to apply for it. It's by an anonymous person. So I think you can take that
Yeah.
question.
Yeah, so Reach IV actually has a bunch of different services. It can offer counseling support, which is on the lines of what Vibha was suggesting. Have an outsider look at your profile objectively, see what are the gaps, what can you do, to build a better profile. And it has a college selection sort of service, which is, if you're closer to the applications, and once your application is ready, then you can with the help of an expert, draw a list of colleges that you can realistically apply to. Then Reach IV has a proper brainstorming and application service wherein experts work with you to brainstorm your story, your achievements, and like Vibha was mentioning, positioning your achievements in the light, in a better light, the way the schools would like to read it. So Reach IV has a bunch of different services. Feel free to write to info@reachiv.com. if you're interested in availing any of them.
So,
And just, very specifically in terms of deferred MBA, if you're looking at applying to deferred MBA now, we have time. The deadlines are end of March. Harvard's deadline is April 29th. We are working on a bunch of students. Either you could jump directly into application services, or honestly, I would suggest you just do a 1 hour counseling to just get an evaluation of whether your profile is actually even strong enough to apply to these programs. The deferred programs are very competitive, and I would encourage you to just do an evaluation first before spending all the energy, time, and money that it will take you to apply to the program. So if I were you, like within a week, I would just do a 1 hour evaluation session. And only if the counselor thinks you have the right profile, would I suggest you go ahead with the whole ordeal of applying to these schools, because of applications, as we went through in the presentation, is quite demanding.
So here's a question that says, while applying for undergraduate admissions, we do not have much content to fill our resumes with. I think this is somebody who's in 12th grade. There aren't many internships available for people before 12th grade. Some schools, like mine, shut down extracurricular activities before boards. Do you think it's still possible for someone like whoever this anonymous person is to get into an Ivy League school for computer science degrees?
So, to anonymous attendee who's written this answer, asked this question, it isn't entirely true that you don't have stuff to fill your resume for a UG admission. We work with a bunch of students who are applying abroad for UG, and they typically have 2 to 3 internships. They have done extra additional coursework on Coursera, or maybe attended summer school, or maybe done research activity with any of their teachers, and they have some extracurricular going on, sports, all of that. So for somebody who's I don't know what class is this person in, but depending on how far away you are from applying, I would say it's never too late to start working on your profile. And if they think that getting in, of course, like they can't get hired for a grad level internship, but what they can still do is shadow people. So if they, for instance, are interested in doing a UG in computer science, they've mentioned, so maybe they can take on some additional coursework in coding. Okay, so I have a student who's done like some Stanford grad level courses on his own. So he's read up books, he's done like some bunch of courses on Coursera, which are intermediate level. Now he's moving on to expert level. So if you're really interested in doing computer science degree, I mean, there are a bunch of different things that you can do out there. I would say start with looking for, maybe startups where you can just go, see, observe, maybe do like a bit of coding for them, and take on some additional coursework. Reach Ivy has a bunch of tie-ups with organizations which help people do research work, and basically help on building their profile. So you can always reach out to us. We can connect you with them. But the short answer to this is, I mean, I would say just this is a myth that you can't have enough content to fill your resume, and just start looking for opportunities for a computer science degree. Immediately start with learning coding, picking up a few additional coursework online, Coursera, edX. They have some pretty reasonable options out there, and try to get at least like 1 or 2 internships under your belt before you apply. It can just be going into a startup and shadowing a coder, or just doing a bit of coding for them, or something related to that.
Thanks for that. I think the next question we can take is, suppose you want to go for a master's program. Is 15 years of education enough to apply for a master's program? And what are the key areas an applicant must focus on while applying as an MSc in finance? How many years of work experience? I think basically how many years of work experience they want to know before they can do an MSc, and Gmat scores. I think there was another question earlier also. What is the appropriate or cutoff Gmat score that they should aim for if they're doing a master's or MBA from one of these Ivy League schools, if they plan to do?
Yeah, so I think Vibha had mentioned this in one of her slides. Um, so I'll first take the age, the number of years of work experience bit of this question. So is having 15 years of education enough to apply for a master's program? I mean, so it depends from university to university and the masters that you want to apply to. Um, Unlike the MBAs, MSc programs tend to not be that rigid about the work experience. So if you're applying for an MSc Finance and if you think you really need those skills for an MSc Finance, and if you have like relevant work experience, then you can position that in a positive light and apply. I would say, do some background research and look at the class profile of that particular MSc degree. So when you go to the website of any university, any program, they typically have a class profile which says what is the average age of the candidates coming in, all of that. What it helps, how it helps is, if you have 15 years of work experience, you would want your peer group to be at a particular level so that you can make the most out of that experience. Okay, so I would highly recommend to check out the class profile, what is the average age, and if that MSc Finance is a pre-experienced MSc Finance, which is, if students are coming in without any work experience, then maybe in the same university look at what are the executive programs. They run a bunch of executive programs, so you can maybe consider applying for them. So having 15 years work experience enough, you could be in fact overqualified for an MSc Finance. So you'll have to do some basic research, look at the university and the class profile and what program suits your needs and your work experience. Then the other part of this question is, what is a good Gmat score to get an admission to a top school? I mean, like Vibha has mentioned, MBA schools look for, look for the complete, they look at the complete profile. So unlike, an IIM, which typically looks at your CAT and, then shortlists you for an interview, an MBA school will look at the overall profile. For a top school, we recommend a score of, 720 plus, because typically Indians are very good test givers. So they just, bump up the average. I mean, they just assume that Indians will be good at test giving, writing tests. So we recommend a GMAT score of at least like 720 plus, but you can apply and even get in with a lower score if your overall profile is very strong.
Okay, thanks for that, Garima. I think there's a question.
Let's take last two questions, no, please.
Yeah, so I have 3 questions, which I think one is about doing these online MBA and online programs, getting an online degree versus actually attending the school. So a lot of them have questions about how valuable is an online MBA that's offered by Upgrad and all these Coursera, etc., versus going to a school. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I'll take a little bit of that. And Garima, please feel free to add whatever I miss.
Yeah.
Guys, obviously, I mean, we are going through, the pandemic. We've all been doing online learning. From my experience and with our shared experience of this webinar itself, obviously, online learning is not as effective as being physically present on a campus. It totally depends on what you're looking for, right? If you want to get a sort of quick qualification at a very low cost, and just sort of have something on your resume to show. Obviously, doing something online helps with that, right? It's quick, it's cheap, it's flexible, and you can probably do it with work, and you don't need to sort of take time off to do it. What do you miss out on when you do something like that? You miss out on the actual learning that takes place in a classroom, because right now I feel so much at a disadvantage, and I feel so distant from all of you. Had I had the opportunity to meet you and actually talk to you personally, it would be a very different experience. Also, the big part of going to undergraduate or masters or MBA or whatever it is the people, right? That is, if you ask me, one big thing. If there was only one thing I could take away from Harvard, what would it be? And of course, the answer would be the people I got to interact with. And online learning doesn't allow for much human interaction. A big component of going to these schools is the trips you do with your friends, weekends you spend at people's homes. My memories of going to my roommate's house for Thanksgiving and seeing my first turkey, going to my friend's house in Japan and doing a tea ceremony with her mom. Like it's just the range of experiences you have, and to me that was a big part of my learning. And unfortunately, obviously, online doesn't offer that. So in my personal opinion, I'm not a big fan of online learning. Of course, unless you have a certain circumstance that really begets compelling circumstance that begets you to do that, I would strongly encourage an on-campus experience. As I mentioned, I've studied at 5 campuses. I've probably visited maybe 50 campuses. And every time I'm on any campus, I have goosebumps. Like, it's just the experience of being on an amazing campus. It's liberating to, beyond expression.
Thanks, Vibha.
Yeah. Yep, I absolutely agree with Vibha, and I agree that online learning is not a substitute for physically being present in a campus. Uh, but one place where online learning can help you is that if you have gaps in your profile, or if you think you want to enhance a particular aspect of your profile, then you can use that to complement you just build on your profile towards getting into that dream MBA. So you can use it to fill gaps, or just sort of enhance aspects. But I agree with, but it's definitely not a substitute for a- an MBA or a proper degree on a campus.
Thanks, Karima. I think the next question is, how do students enhance their profiles to kind of win various scholarships that are available?
So how do you get a scholarship? There are 2 broad categories of scholarships: need-based scholarships and merit-based scholarships. I'm going to talk about merit-based ones first, because the need-based ones are also based on merit. What I mean by merit is all the elements I have spoken about a couple of times on the call today. The profile, right? If you have the right profile, the school's going to want you. If you have a really stellar profile, they're going to want you, and they're going to pay for you to come to the school. So it boils down to having the stellar profile for the merit-based scholarships. For the need-based ones, they will first look at merit, and then they will say, well, we really like you, we want you on our campus. Now we need to do a need assessment, wherein you send your financial tax papers, household income papers, and they will do a need-based assessment. But even for a need-based assessment, you first need to meet the merit requirement, which is why we start with profile building, as taking us back to the presentation as early as 4 or 5 years before. So you're consistently building up on being stellar across dimensions. So when you finally apply, you've got a really standout profile, and hopefully then even qualify for scholarships. We get people every year who get in with full tuition, half tuition. The schools are rich. The schools have money. It's more about who's getting that money. And if you want that money, make sure the profile is stellar. It's as simple as that. Shazia, we'll take the one last question.
Thanks a lot. I think, I think that kind of covers most of the questions. So I'll just take one last one. Zarifa has asked a question that while applying for fellowship, will applying for a fellowship right after graduation help me get into a good post-graduation degree with a gap of 2 or 3 years?
Garima, over to you.
Yeah, so there are a bunch of different fellowships available out there, right? So I did the Young India Fellowship program right after my undergrad, which was in engineering. And the reason why I did that, because I was pretty clear in my undergrad that I want to work in the social development sector. So I was looking for opportunities which would help me make that transition, because I knew that if I apply for a master's straight away, they might not like my application because my undergrad is not relevant. So I'm giving you this specific example because the kind of fellowship you apply to would really matter. So for example, if you are also like me, and if you want to transition subjects, then you can use fellowship program as a stopgap. If you have I think there was a bit about gap, so I wasn't clear whether they already have 2 years of gap and want to apply for a fellowship program.
So I'm not sure, but if you can address both, like if they
Okay.
have a couple of years or if they're planning to take a couple of years.
Okay.
Both.
So if you have already have a gap after your undergrad, and you were applying for a fellowship, then I would recommend apply for a fellowship program which helps you get some real-time work experience. There are a bunch of fellowship options out there, especially in the social development sector. something like a Young India Fellowship also lets you do an internship on the side. So you're studying for a year, but also doing a full-time internship, which you can really, say that it was like a full-time, like you can project it like, some solid work experience. If you are planning on taking a gap year after a fellowship, then I would say suggest, if you are already planning it, then it's just better to not show any gaps on your resume if you can. So if you know that you're planning to take a gap year and you know for what, then I would just suggest, stay in touch with sort of the trade that you want to be in or the industry that you want to be in, maybe through freelancing, maybe through doing some side projects, so that you are not out of touch entirely. Because these days, I mean, just the work like sort of the career opportunities are also changing very swiftly. So I would suggest, if you're sure you want to take a gap, then just stay in touch with your trade, your industry, one way or the other.
Thanks a lot, Garima, and thank you to the whole Reach IV team. Thank you, Vibha, for doing this for us and coming here and sharing all the lovely knowledge that you have. Um, I think this was the most like a very informative session, and I have learned a lot. So I can imagine, like all our students must have benefited a great deal from this. We still have a lot of outstanding questions, so I'm going to encourage all of them to reach out to you guys. But thank you to the entire Reach IV team for putting this together, and we had a great, great session. Looking forward to working with you in the future too.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you
Shazia.
guys. Thanks, Shazia, for reaching out. Really appreciate it. Thank you guys.
And thank you,
Thanks to
everyone.
the entire team over at the Aga Khan Foundation, and thanks to the students. I mean, the questions have just been incredible. You guys have really made us think. I mean, I just love the flow, and I think thanks to the questions, we also got to cover a lot of ground. I think we've talked about everything from profile building to scholarships to fellowships, PhD programs, MBA schools, etc. Insha Mawani not answer all my questions. Insha, we tried our best. We're really out of time. It was meant to be a 60-minute webinar. Put your question on Quora and we'll try to get an answer out for you. Guys, feel free to get in touch with us, help@reachiv.com. Follow us on Instagram. ReachIV is one handle and mine is Vibha Kagzi. And Danisha, yeah, as I mentioned, contact information is help@reachiv.com. And we request Shazia to just send out our information to everyone who attended. So you'll have us as well.
We will
Thanks,
share the
thanks.
information. Thank you so much.
We'll share it.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. Thank you guys signing off. Thank you all for being so patient at the start. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.